1, 2, 3, 4.
Everyone, this is Jewish Talk, coming to you from NASA Community College on 90.3 WHPC. We are also streaming on nccradio.org. Write that down, dear friends. For those who are not reaching us on the radio, can listen to us on the internet, nccradio.org. This program is later archived on Spreaker.com. This program is repeated on Sunday evenings at 11 p.m. So, hi there, my name is, you guessed it right, it's Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Of course, this all depends when you are listening or watching us. Ay, gewalt, I nearly forgot. You can actually see us on right now. I'm waving on Facebook Live at Anshul Pearl. So it's facebook.com/Anshul Pearl. So hello on the radio. Hello online. Hello to the world. Well, we're going to talk a lot today, a number of subjects. And we look forward to sharing them with you and giving the opportunity to think. Now, my first subject for today is something really, really very, very important to everybody over here. And I want to say good morning to those who are tuning in right now on Facebook Live. And to get everything online, I want to be able to see everybody's comments and appreciate what you are saying. So hello to Eitan Kelshevsky. Good morning to Gene Brandenstein, to everybody out there joining us today. The first thing I wanted to talk about really is something that has been bothered me for quite a while. And that is, can we honestly say, are we living the life that you or me intended? Are you living the life you intended? On June 8th, in the year 2018, the Jewish Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, I'm sure you remember him, Charles Krauthammer, he spent his childhood summers in Long Beach, Long Island. I had the great honor of actually changing the mezuzahs on his parents' home. They had a beautiful bungalow in the east end of Long Beach. So back in June 8th, in the year 2018, Charles wrote a note to readers explaining why he hadn't written any articles over the past few months. Explained that he was ill and had only a few weeks to live. And he ended his note by saying, "I leave this life with no regrets. It was a wonderful life, full and complete, with the great loves and the great endeavors that made it worth living. I am sad to leave," Charles wrote, "but I leave with the knowledge that I lived the life that I intended." Sadly, on the morning of the 21st of June, 2018, I opened the news to read that Charles had passed away the night before. As Linda Zellickson posts, he was an amazing journalist. Amazing. What most people don't know, I had tried. Charles actually wrote Dvar Torahs, words on the weekly Torah portion, on the Chumash of the week. He shared them with his parents, and they were given, or they were part of a conversation that I had with Rabbi Waxlack, who passed away, Olav Shalom. He was the rabbi of the Young Israel of Long Beach, and I'd encouraged him to see if we could somehow publish the words of Torah from Charles Krauthammer. Unfortunately, to this very day, I don't think if they've seen the light of the day. In any case, he passed away on the 21st of June, 2018. And throughout the subsequent few months, I couldn't get the concluding line of his note out of my mind. What were those words again? I leave with the knowledge that I lived the life that I intended. How many people do you know are able to say they lived the life they intended? A sad example is of a man who didn't live by his creed is the story of Sam Walton. This is Dr. Kolshevsky's good friend, the multi-billionaire CEO of Walmart, the fourth largest corporation in the United States. As he was lying on his deathbed, he struggled to get out his last 3 words on earth. He had given his life for his business. In that area, he succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Yet it came at a price. He hardly spent any time with his wife, his children, and his grandchildren. He hadn't allowed himself the moments of loving interaction with his loved ones. So do you know what his final 3 words were? Please, no swearing so early in the morning. Do you know what his final 3 words were? I blew it. 3 words, I blew it. He had billions of dollars, but by his own admission, he had sadly failed. The urge to put fortune before family is as old as the Bible itself. As the Torah recounts in the book of Numbers, upon being informed of the plan to cross the Jordan into Canaan, which is current-day Israel, the tribes of Reuben and Gad approached Moses and asked for permission to stay behind in a land called Yazer, due to its fertility and its commercial opportunity. Moses became upset with them, not because of their actual request, but because of the way they worded their request. Noticed that in their request they put their cattle before their children. Their exact words were, "We will build sheepfolds for our livestock here and cities for our children." Moses says, not so. Make the primary thing in your life. Make what is primary, primary, and what is secondary, secondary. Only after agreeing to do so did Moses give them his blessing. This really is the main challenge of life, isn't it? To make the primary things primary and the secondary things secondary. I know that Linda Zellickson and Zalman Weg knows this by heart. In 1954, a speech was made by former U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower. And he said like this, correct me if I'm wrong, Levana Cohen Lichter, thank you. I have 2 kinds of problems, Dwight Eisenhower said, the urgent and the important. The distinction is this: important activities have an outcome that leads us to achieving our goals, whether it's professional or personal. Urgent activities demand immediate attention and are usually associated with achieving someone else's goal. They're often the ones we concentrate on, and they demand attention because the consequences of not dealing with them are immediate. So disciplining ourselves to focus on the important over the urgent is one of the greatest tools for successful and purposeful living. I'm reminded of a sobering WhatsApp message that made the rounds some time ago. It went like this: hello from your smartphone. You hold me with both hands ever so gently. You ensure that I'm always with you. If I fall, you make sure I'm not injured. I always have your undivided attention. You get upset if others disturb our time together. You never leave home without me. You never forget me in a taxi or anywhere else. If you don't know where I am for a single moment, shine, you panic. When you eat, I'm beside you. When you're in the bathroom, shine, I'm also with you. When you sleep, I'm by your pillow. When I scream, you rush to pick me up. When I'm low, you re-energize me. Every month you set aside money for me. You upgrade me as soon as there's something new out there for me. And we exchange one schmatter for another. When you are bored, you find me interesting. When you're sad, I bring a smile to your face. When you come home from work, I'm your priority. You spend more time with me than with your family. But don't forget, I couldn't care less if you didn't do any of the above, because I have no feelings for you. I don't love you. Your family does. I don't love you. Your family does. So as we reread the exchange between Moses and the tribes of Reuben and Gad each year, we're reminded to be extra mindful of how we set our priorities in life. A few ideas that can be helpful in this important exercise. Cut out the events and the interactions that leave you feeling shallow, diminished, and drained. Spend time pursuing a hobby. Get involved in a good cause. Add meaning to your life. Do more of the things that make you feel most alive. Create goals of body, of mind, and of soul. Here are some that you'd expect me to say. Why not spend more time exploring your heritage? Join a Torah class. Take a crash course in Jewish history, philosophy, or learn how to read Hebrew. Spend time developing and nourishing your soul. Make time for yourself and your family. Establish a new family rule. My goodness, I'll tell you, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. My wonderful engineer today recognized that I am a little verklempt over here over the subject, so I'm going to make a blessing and have a little drop of water over here. L'chaim to everybody. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvareh. Thank you very much. You know what? Talking about these subjects can really, get you going. Again, establish a new family rule. No phones at the dinner table. No phones in your bedroom. Shine. Make one day a week technology free. You know what we call it? It's the best kept secret on Long Island. It's called Shabbat. It will literally change your life. Create an atmosphere at the Shabbat table by singing and telling stories. Go around the table sharing the highlights of your week. Your family bond will grow stronger and deeper. Why not designate a few minutes each morning to pray? Recite the bedtime Shema together as a family. There is nothing as calming for children before going to bed. Women, create a sacred space each Friday evening just before sunset by lighting Shabbat candles and communicating with the one above. Men, put on tefillin each morning, lay tefillin each morning, and set the intention. It sets the goal. It sets the tone for the entire day. These are just some of Judaism's time-tested practices that can help you create an oasis of clarity, calmness in the sea of turbulence that we call life. These are just some suggestions to help us design a life that you and me will one day look back on and be able to say, really in a happy way, I have been blessed to live the life that I intended. I have been blessed to live the life that I intended. My friends, I want to say hello to Lynn Feldman. Fantastic. This is a beautiful. Linda Zellickson, Eitan, unbelievable. And everybody else joined. I want to make sure everybody's in, and I get complaints from everybody. Gina Marie, unbelievable. Thank you so much. Who else has joined us over here? But wherever you are, this is, I want to say hello to Phil and Jamie who are listening. This is amazing, from Massachusetts. I didn't realize America reaches that far. Now I'd like to share with you something else, talking about meaningful aspects of our life and living a life that we intended. Do you know that overcoming your temptation for unhealthy eating is the key to spiritual success? Surprisingly, many kosher consumers are non-Jewish persons. They apparently look for that kosher symbol on the packaged food because they think that kosher means healthy. On the flip side, some Jewish people who keep kosher only look for the kosher symbol and don't care about the ingredients. They apparently believe that kosher means fine to eat. In fact, although eating kosher is a mitzvah, a commandment, it has nothing to do with the mitzvah of keeping healthy. One can eat strictly kosher food and be very, very unhealthy. Moreover, while keeping healthy surely makes good sense, many people don't realize that keeping healthy is a commandment in the Torah, in Judaism. A deep understanding of this mitzvah can be gleaned from examining the Torah's very first commandment. What was the first commandment that took place in the Garden of Eden? Thou shalt put aside your iPhone. No, I'm sorry. That was for a different program. Seriously, what was the first commandment? God commanded human beings, saying, what was the first commandment? From every tree of the garden you shall surely eat, and from the tree of knowledge of good and evil you should not eat from. Fascinatingly, the very concept of being commanded is introduced through the area of eating and self-control. Didn't have to be that way. Think about it. After all, we have an extraordinary important mitzvah that could have echoed Rabbi Akiva's famous declaration. The first mitzvah we could be commanded was, love your neighbor. It's Torah's most important principle. Accordingly, the first mitzvah given to Adam could have been, towards every creature you shall show kindness, and to no creature shall you show meanness. It could have been based on the first mitzvah given to us could have been the first two of the 10 Commandments that states, you shall worship God, and you shall not worship idols. So here we have Adam and Eve, or better known as Adam and Chava. Thank you, Michael. I can see you, raging. Yes, it's Adam and Chava, who represent the archetypes of humanity, were not commanded about ethics, religion. What was their first commandment? Rather about eating and self-restraint. But the lesson doesn't end with the commandment. This first mitzvah is soon put to test with the introduction of temptation. What happened? What happened, my friends? And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and it was tempting to the eyes. With this characteristic brevity, the Torah is teaching that the epitome of a mitzvah is self-control in the face of food temptation. Isn't that fascinating? From this story of Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava in the garden, 7 principles emerge. Number 1, there are certain pleasures we are meant to enjoy. Number 2, there are certain pleasures best to avoid. The temptation is real. The temptation can be overwhelming. A person will rationalize the desire in order to succumb. Number 6, a suggested path to succeed includes personal restrictions. Number 7, stumbling is expected and redemption is possible, so never give up. So if we keep aware of these 7 principles, that can actually enable us to conquest any temptation for food or anything else. Absent this wisdom, attempts at temptation control, such as dieting, will tend to fail. For our animal nature will always say, no, the animal side of ourselves is always ready to pounce on any temptations. Yet until recently, food itself wasn't necessarily more of a test than other temptations. 500 years ago, or even 50 years ago, food wasn't the kind of temptation that it is now. Approximately 50 years ago, two things changed regarding food production that impacted our relationship to food. The first was the agricultural revolution of the 1960s, which created vast food surpluses worldwide, making calories very cheap in most countries. The second was the scientific engineering of food to be extremely pleasing to the eye and, of course, the tongue. These two developments have transformed the desire to eat something unhealthy, including overeating, from an occasional challenge to one of the greatest and most universal tests of our times. Temptation for unhealthy eating are constant and incredibly powerful. It's easy to see why our bodies are designed to desire food every day. Most of us have access to more calories than we require. We're bombarded by clever marketing to eat unhealthy food. Salt, sugar, fat are addictive, and manufacturers know this. These conditions conspire to get us repeatedly to fail the eating test. The forbidden fruit of the Garden of Eden has become accurately, permanent and pertinent to all of us. So you see, my friends, struggling with temptation builds spiritual muscle. Yet the situation is far from bleak or desperate. On the contrary, any struggle with temptation is meaningful, for the struggle itself is central to elevating oneself to one's higher potential. Each and every experience of desire really is a new opportunity for this self-elevation. When I feel a temptation and resist it because I know that this thing or action is not good for me, at that moment I'm achieving my primary purpose for being alive. Therefore, the temptation, when resisted, is a gift. Just as struggling with a dumbbell builds physical muscle, struggling with temptations builds spiritual muscles. And while food temptation has become a central struggle of all of us, it is also remains the archetype of all spiritual tests. When one begins to conquer this primary test, as we were discussing from Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, other temptations can become easily mastered. So this self-mastery really has cosmic ramifications. And I share with you the words of Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the Ramchal. He says, in truth, the world stands in a balance. For if a person is pulled after the world and is drawn further from his Creator, he is damaged, and he damages the world with him. But if he rules over himself and unites himself with his Creator and uses the world only to aid himself in the service of the Creator, guess what, my friends? He is uplifted, and the world is uplifted with him. We elevate ourselves and the world through self-control in the face of temptations of unhealthy food, laziness, and other bad habits. This is the foundation of the commandment to be healthy. And every healthy choice in face of temptation is a step up that spiritual ladder. I want to say hello to all those joining us. I see that we have more people joining us with wonderful comments. Let's see now. Wonderful. Very good. Beautiful. Thank you, everybody. You can go to our Facebook here, facebook.com/my name, Anshel Perl, and you'll be joining us. And I'm waving right now. Yes, I can see you there. Amazing. Good morning to you. Please make sure the bagels are kosher. Okay. Let's go on. I'm going to now share with you something that's very, very timely and relates to us and how we should look at other people. Not only must be, so to speak, spiritually healthy and physically healthy and not be tempted to invite temptations on any level, I want to share with you how to look at a difficult situation. How to look at not just yourself, but how to look at other people as well. That's also part of spiritual health. of how do you look at other people. The Talmud tells us that Jerusalem was destroyed on the account of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. For our Talmudical scholars, this is in the tractate Gittin, page 55b. This is a story that is studied, remembered at this time of the year, where we're now in what is known as the 3 weeks, a very tough and mourning period in the Jewish calendar. It began on the day that where Moses smashed the tablets coming down, when everybody was doing the Macarena around the golden calf. It concludes with on Tisha B'Av, which is this Thursday a week, with Tisha B'Av, a very, very serious fast, the destructions of the temples. And the Talmud, giving us some background, helps us to understand what led to the destruction of the temple. And here is where the story continues. There was a Jew who had a friend called Kamsa and an enemy called Bar Kamsa. According to the Maharsha, they were father and son. One day, the man threw a big feast, and he sent his servant to invite Kamsa. But the servant mistakenly invited Bar Kamsa instead. When Bar Kamsa arrived at the feast, the host wasn't impressed. "You're my enemy," he says, and ordered this Bar Kamsa to get up and leave. Deeply shaken, Bar Kamsa pleaded with the man to reconsider. "Look, I'm already here. At least let me stay. I'll cover the costs of my food, of my portion of food and drink." Obviously, there must have been an open bar from White Rose. When the host refused, Bar Kamsa upped his offer to pay for half of the entire feast. But still the host refused. Finally, Bar Kamsa offered to pay for the entire party. "Just don't embarrass me like this." But the host grabbed Bar Kamsa by the hand, and he forcibly escorted him from the hall. Bar Kamsa said, Since the sages, all the rabbis, all the sages were sitting there and didn't protest, I will go to and report them to the government." And sure enough, he traveled to Rome, where he libeled the Jewish people to the emperor. He says, "They have rebelled against you, and I can prove it. Test them. Send them a sacrifice to be brought in their holy temple on behalf of the government, and you'll see they will refuse to accept it." The emperor sent Bar Kamsa back with a choice calf for the temple. But on the way, this Bar Kamsa slyly made a blemish on the calf's upper lip, rendering it unfit for the altar. Tragically, the sages refused the sacrifice, and in his rage the emperor decided to send his forces to burn down Jerusalem. So now you know the rest of the story. Welcome, Karen Dumbeck. Welcome back. So 2 primary questions arise from this story. First, what were the host and the Bar Kamsa fighting about so fearlessly, so bad that the host simply couldn't tolerate Bar Kamsa's presence? What were they arguing about? So much so that no amount of money could change his mind. We all know it costs a fortune to make a bar mitzvah or a wedding. While the guests are enjoying themselves, what do you think the host is doing? He's brooding over the fact that he's 20% over budget, and he has no idea how he's going to pay for the rest of it. See here, the host flatly refuses Bar Kamsa's offer to foot the bill for the whole thing. Was für ein Mischigan is das? Even if for some reason he really, really disliked Bar Kamsa, couldn't he have taken the money and let the man stay there? And Baruch Hashem, he could continue the fighting after the party. Tongue in cheek, of course. The second question that we have, when the sages witnessed this episode unfolding before their eyes, seeing somebody mortified in this fashion, why indeed did they remain silent? How could they? We find a key to this puzzling story in a remarkable letter of the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe. It's fascinating. In honor of the Rebbe and Rebbitzins that our Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson and Rebbitzin Chaim Mushka, they got married in Warsaw in 1928. The father-in-law of the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, he published a copy, a facsimile of a handwritten letter. And this was a memento for all the wedding guests back there in 1928. In it, there, in one line, sheds light on just what happened during that very turbulent days in Jerusalem long ago. And in that letter that I will share with you, we have a timeless message for all of us today. The Alter Rebbe's letter goes back to the early days of the Hasidic movement, where the opponents of Hasidism waged a bitter campaign against the movement's adherents. There was a tremendous misunderstanding and what was going on, what the Hasidim were all about, this whole new philosophy, and there was a big to-do going on between the two of them. And there was boycotts, harassment, and they were making those who were Hasidim, making their lives unbearable in any way they could. It got to the point where some of the younger Hasidim in the city of Vilna felt it was time to fight back. And they even managed to convince some prominent Hasid of the time, Rabbi Moshe Meislis, that it was time to retaliate. In steps the Alter Rebbe. He went to prison over this tumult as well. In a letter he addressed to Rabbi Moshe, and he warned against this kind of action. No fighting, no reaction. And he wrote like this: "It is my request and wish to awaken a spirit of purity in his pure heart, to overcome his emotions." He was speaking to this rabbi who was now joining this idea. And here's the point, my friends. Because peace never results from quarrels, God forbid, and especially from a quarrel for the sake of heaven. Indeed, most of the troubles and tribulations stem from disputes for the sake of heaven. What troubles and tribulations and what disputes for the sake of heaven was the Alter Rebbe referring to? Seemingly, we typically react the opposite. We usually think that the greatest troubles and tribulations and the destruction of the temple resulted in an exile that lasted for all these 2,000 years was not the product of a dispute for the sake of heaven, but, as we all know, of the baseless hatred found in this story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Whatever their dispute was, it appears to have been an ego thing, a dishonorable personal vendetta, far from being a dispute for the sake of heaven. But I'm here today to share with you there's another take on this story, offered by the famous scholar Rabbi Moshe Sofer, head of the famed yeshiva in Pressburg, and called by the name of his main book, the Chassam Sofer. His explanation illuminates the whole story such that our questions on the story are resolved and the Alter Rebbe's words make perfect sense. So stand by, my friends. You're about to hear something that will shake the foundations of your house. The Chassam Sofer tells us, who was this Bar Kamsa? Who was this individual who was invited by mistake? He was a sinner who had rejected the faith in God. He was a rabble-rouser looking to mock Judaism and those who follow its path. In other words, he was the sort of person that a God-fearing person would have every reason to keep away from. And that's why the host was so loath to having him at the party. This wasn't some petty fight between two people who had opposite personalities and couldn't stand each other. It wasn't a business falling out, a dispute between neighbors about noise levels or blocked driveways or unmowed grass. The host in this story meant well. He wanted to protect the honor of the sages and the sensitivities of his religiously observant guests by removing from their midst such a known provocateur. He refused the money because he believed that he was standing up for what's right. Taking the money would have meant selling out his Torah values. And so for the same reason, the sages remained silent. They approved of the host's righteous indignation and zeal, and presumably, had the host not booted out this bar kamsa from the party, they would have done it themselves to protect Torah's dignity. The lesson from the story, then, takes on a whole new meaning. When we say that Jerusalem was destroyed on the account of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, when we talk about it, how important it is to avoid repeating the story, God forbid, it doesn't just mean not to be obnoxious and exclude people from our celebrations. That is obvious. But there's a deeper message here as well. The sages are telling us to avoid the trap of this kind of righteous hatred in the name of the Torah. Righteous hatred in the name of the Torah. True, the Torah tells us not to associate with wicked people. True, we must denounce all that is evil and wrong, and not just look at the other way to avoid rocking the boat. However, and indeed there's a crucial however, even when it's necessary to rock the boat and call out a wrongdoing, we must remember we are dealing with another human being. Another human being. Because the fight is not personal, but about adhering to the Torah. The sole aim must always be to try and draw the wrongdoer back into the fold. There is zero room for casting someone away. It is our duty to engage them and engage them again. If we fail to do so, if, God forbid, the dispute for the sake of heaven gets to the point where a person cannot find in his heart to at least sit at the table with another, that is a broken day for all of us. So broken, it causes the breaking of the very temple that represents unity and oneness. As the Alter Rebbe explains in chapter 32 of Tanya, even if you see another person's behavior is utterly evil, even if they are violating the entire Torah, God forbid, at the same moment that we must despise the person's deeds, we must love him for who he is deep down. Because man is more than his or her behavior. Deep inside of us lies a neshama. Chelek Elokai mimal mamish. Each of us have an actual portion of God sitting inside of us, which means that no matter what mistakes one has made, one is as full of spirituality and potential for goodness and holiness as the day they were born. As much as we hate wickedness, we must love even more the spark of godliness, a spark which perpetually is pure and will inevitably come to light in each and every one of us. And I'm going to share with you two stories that I shared at our synagogue yesterday. Two beautiful stories. My friends, this is how the Rebbe would look at people who, in their day-to-day life and how they presented themselves, was far from the correct way, but nevertheless to keep in touch, because deep inside of every one of us still lies that spark of holiness. The first story I share with you is from Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach. He had been a student at the Chabad Yeshiva in New York, and he served as an emissary of the Rebbe, a shliach, on college campuses between 1951 and 1954. Over time, he left the Chabad movement, styling himself as a singing rabbi, using song and storytelling to spread Judaism, and unfortunately, sometimes using methods that were beyond the accepted bounds of Jewish law. So when Shlomo Carlebach visited Australia for a concert tour, the head of the Chabad movement in Australia, Rabbi Yitzhak David Groner, who actually knew Shlomo Carlebach from his time in yeshiva, received instructions from headquarters not to invite Shlomo to perform the concerts at the local Chabad institutions. A few weeks later, Rabbi Groner receives a call from the Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Chodakov, asking him how Shlomo's visit had gone. When Rabbi Groner protested that he had been instructed not to invite him, the rabbi said, obviously in the name of the Rebbe, "You were told not to formally invite him to Chabad as an institution, but as a personal acquaintance, you should have invited him to your house for a cup of tea." The second story, my friends, of Chaim Cohen. Chaim Cohen was an Israeli jurist and politician, serving as the Minister of Justice, Attorney General, and eventually as a justice on the Supreme Court of Israel. In his youth, he had studied in yeshiva. He had served as a cantor in Meir She'arim, in a very religious section. But he veered from the conventional path of Jewish observance. Throughout his career, he took a number of positions directly contrary to Jewish law, including notably his stance on who is a Jew. In his personal life, too, he raised the ire of the religious community when he wanted to marry a divorcee. Halachically, in Jewish law, he was forbidden. He was a Kohen, and therefore was forbidden in Jewish law to marry a divorcee. So what did he do? He traveled outside of Israel, to Cyprus no less, to arrange a civil marriage elsewhere. His relationship with the religious Jews was, to put it mildly, azoi, strained. During the month of Tishrei, high holiday month, in 1975, Chaim Cohen was visiting a friend in New York who suggested he join the annual delegation from the Israeli consulate in Manhattan on their visit to 770 on the night of Simchas Torah. The Israelis arrived to a hall packed with thousands of Hasidim, waiting in anticipation, waiting for the Hakafas, highlight of the year, the dancing with the Torahs. The Gaboim, those in charge of the synagogue, always looked out for the Israeli delegation. I remember seeing this myself when I was a student then. And they all looked out because they wanted to do what the Rebbe wanted, is to honor all the persons who had come from the Israeli consulate, to honor them with holding the Torah and to recite some of the Hakafas. Then suddenly they saw this individual, Chaim Cohen, arriving with the delegation. And they faced a dilemma. Could they honor such a person with a Torah scroll like this person, Chaim Cohen, who seemingly looked for every opportunity to show his disdain for Jewish tradition and the very Torah being celebrated? From his place on the bima, the Rebbe observed this hesitation, and he brushed aside their concerns. If Chaim Cohen is here and wants to honor the Torah, how can we refuse? And so Chaim Cohen was given a Torah scroll, which he held tightly in the middle of the room, as the Rebbe encouraged the exuberant singing. Not for 5 minutes did he stand there, not for 10, but a full 45 minutes he held onto that Torah, the Rebbe looking on intently the entire time. Chaim Cohen didn't change his legal philosophy or his public opinions. But years later, when another Israeli official living in Manhattan was invited to 770 for Hakafas, he refused to come. And he explained, you see, my friend Chaim Cohen went one year, and I saw how it deeply affected him and changed his personal opinion on a number of issues. And I'm comfortable where I am right now. These two stories, two individuals who publicly, etc., but still, they still have a neshama, still have a soul. So, my question to everybody is, how can we see this good in everyone? How can we believe that a person is greater than their mistakes? How is it possible to fulfill the mitzvah of love your fellow like yourself? We may have discussed this in the past in the name of the Tzemach Tzedek, who had a whole treatise on the mitzvah of how to fulfill the mitzvah of V'ahavta l'recha kamecha. And that is, we must love another person like oneself. The way one loves himself is unique. In our pervasive self-love, we do anything to convince ourselves that we aren't that bad. As King Solomon says in Mishlei, love covers over all sin, especially when it comes to one's own. To a certain degree, we're all narcissists. And this narcissism works in 3 stages. First, a person experiences self-loathing at having acted wrongly. That is followed by an internal whitewashing of the story. Finally, when the whitewashing is over, a person arrives at the 3rd stage, where he concludes that he was never an aggressor at all, and guess what? He was a victim. Let me give you an example. Imagine a man comes home from a long day at work. All he wants is that plate of chicken and rice waiting for him when he gets home. Unfortunately, his wife is exhausted today and didn't cook any rice or chicken, or in fact anything at all. It's late at night. The stores are closed. The fridge is completely empty. The man finally faces the reality that he's going hungry that night. And he unleashes his disappointment on the easiest target, his poor wife. A few minutes pass, and he starts feeling bad. Did she really deserve to be attacked like that? She was home alone all day, taking care of the house. What was I thinking? What kind of a terrible person am I? This self-loathing goes on for about 2 minutes. Before the 2nd stage arrives, I'm not that bad, the man tells himself. I worked all day to pay the bills. Could I be faulted for being upset when there's nothing to eat? Would anyone else respond differently? Now that the man is feeling better about himself, he reaches the 3rd stage. Why did my wife even get offended to begin with? Didn't she realize how hard I work and how hungry I was? How could she? And here is where the mitzvah of love your fellow like yourself comes into play. We've got to use the self-test. What is that? Judge another person with the same love you employ when you judge yourself. Hello? Judge another person with the same love you employ when you judge yourself. When I hurt someone else because I love myself, I bend over backwards to justify myself so that I can live with myself. The key is to extend the same courtesy when someone else hurts me. I must ask myself what I would tell myself if I was in that person's shoes. I must look at the entirety of the circumstances and understand all the factors that lead people to do what they do. I must ask myself how I'd want others to view the situation if I was the one doing the hurting. Suddenly, I will arrive at a new perspective, one of forgiveness and understanding that when all is said and done, the other guy had a bad day, and his behavior doesn't reflect who he really is. He is still valuable and worthy of my love. As Hillel says, do not do unto others what is hateful to you. And there are few things we hate more than being judged unfavorably without being given the benefit of the doubt or viewed as part of the picture. So the message of the story of Bar Kamsa is so relevant today as ever. This is the time for each and every one of us to get up and say, stop! Stop to all the hatred out there. We have different opinions. We all agree. Some people advocate for things that are truly harmful or actually contradict Jewish values. But we must never stop to love each other and remember that far more unites us than divides us. we must avoid the trap of righteous hatred, which is no more than the ploy of the evil side of the Yetzer Hara. And when we can look beneath the surface, we can find true unity, and together we can overcome every challenge. I'd like to share with you a remarkable story featured on a popular Israeli TV program called Uvda, which means happening. It was a typical evening for Rabbi Shlomo Kovas, a Chabad rabbi in Budapest. He had been getting ready to go home after giving a class in shul when he received a text message. It said like this: "Hi, this is Sazand Zagadi." That's name that is used in Budapest, in Hungary, and I'd like to meet with you. Rabbi Kovas was shocked. Zagedi, this gentleman who was reaching out to him, was a high-ranking leader of Jobbik, a neo-Nazi party known for its rabid anti-Semitism. As a child, this individual sold black shirts with swastikas, and later was a founding member of the Hungarian Guard, an outlawed militia threatening minorities across the country. Members would arrange marches where Israeli flags were torched as they chanted, "Go back to Auschwitz." In short, Zagedi, this individual, was a man you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley. And now he wants to talk to the rabbi, the Chabad rabbi over there in Budapest. So the rabbi agreed to meet with him and invited him to his home. The man arrived looking rather confused. The rabbi thought he was hallucinating when this gentleman explained that rivals within his party had uncovered the ultimate dirt on him. What was the ultimate dirt on him? Apparently, his grandmother, his mother's mother, had been Jewish, and a survivor of Auschwitz, no less. For decades, she had tried to hide her past, but now the secret was out. This individual, Zagedi, the anti-Semite nationalist, was 100% Jewish himself. So Zagedi was in shock. He wanted to understand what a Jew is and what it means to be Jewish, and why he was suddenly at risk of losing his ascending career just because of his grandmother. The rabbi explained that according to Jewish law, Judaism passes by birth through one's mother. Zagedi came to terms with the fact that things would no longer be the same for him. Sure enough, he resigned from the party and embarked on a journey of self-discovery. A few weeks later, he met with the rabbi again, expressing his wish to join the Jewish community. Rabbi Kovas was speechless. Could he accept a person who just weeks ago had spewed vile anti-Semitism, who tried to turn Hungary into a powder keg of hatred? The issue became a heated debate. Elderly Jews, Holocaust survivors, who were afraid to walk in the streets due to this individual's hateful rhetoric, were horrified at the idea of him sitting next to them in shul. Should everything be forgiven just because he decided overnight to be a nice guy? So this rabbi in Budapest raised the matter with Rabbi Baruch Oberlander, who I know. He's the chief rabbi of Hungary and the head of the rabbinical court there. And I heard this story from Rabbi Oberlander himself, who shared that he struggled to reach a decision. After examining the relevant halachic works, he was unsure what to do until he remembered something he once heard from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe had told the following story. The Maggid of Mezrich, this was a student of the Baal Shem Tov, once called for his student Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhensk, and he said, "Melech, you hear what they're saying in heaven? Love for a fellow mankind means to love a completely wicked person just like you would love a righteous person. He said, this is what they're saying up in heaven. Love means you love a wicked person just like you would love a righteous person. Now it occurred to Rabbi Oberlander, could this apply more aptly to anyone than this in this situation? It was decided to put aside his past and give him a chance to turn a new leaf. And guess what? This Segedi became a Baal Teshuvah. He became an active member of the Jewish community who avidly combats anti-Semitism. He goes around now sharing his story around the world. So my friends, as we, during this very, very important time in the Jewish calendar, the 3 weeks, may we succeed in fulfilling this mitzvah of love your fellow as yourself, even when it's hard. That is precisely what will uproot the baseless hatred that resulted in the 3 weeks, and the very soon may the third Beis HaMikdash be rebuilt, which will become an example of true unity with the coming of Mashiach very, very speedily. My friends, this idea of doing and making a difference and looking at others in the more deeper ways is a challenge. It's not so easy. I know there's many people listening right now saying there's no way I can, hate someone who is, and not hate someone who is wicked. I want to conclude with a story that happened in Paris, and it was watched on YouTube by more than 30 million people. A YouTube video shows a man, French YouTuber called De Merci, pouring gasoline on himself and preparing to self-immolate, meant to be a social experiment that it went viral across social media platforms. The only person who tried to prevent this man, this De Merci, from hurting himself was Mendel Narboni, a young Chabad yeshiva boy from Paris who wears a kippah and tzitzis, who intervened to save him as the crowd looked on, as he was thinking the suicide attempt was real. Narboni, 18 years old, who himself is a content creator in Paris, related that he was on the scene at the public square in Paris, filming a video of his own for his own channel, when he sees a man whom he didn't realize preparing to light himself up on fire. Mendel Narboni didn't know that this person was really just a social experiment when he tried to stop him from setting himself on fire. At first I thought it was just water. Afterwards I saw his face and I understood that he was depressed. He took out the lighter and I said to myself, no, it's not possible that before my own eyes I see someone setting himself on fire. It's just not possible. So I came, I took the lighter, I sat with him, this young man, and I spoke to him and said, no, this isn't the right thing to do. Life is the most sacred thing. Do not end your life. I can help you with your struggles. And then afterwards he realized it was an experiment to see if people will get involved. As it turns out, besides this boy, nobody got up to do anything. He was the only one who tried to prevent the man from lighting himself up on fire. Some people are saying that Mendel was part of the prank. Maybe. But the effect was not diminished. He made a Kiddush Hashem. He sanctified God's name in front of 30 million people. People are asking, why was he the only one who ran over to save this man? When you see how the Torah chooses to end, you know the answer. It's all about this conviction that we are not living in a bubble. We must always be there for each other. We need to be like this boy, Mendel. There are fires burning everywhere and people giving up on themselves. Like Mendel, we can extinguish these flames and offer words of gestures of hope, of solace, of love and comfort to all those struggling, and to be able to sit down and show them that we will help. This is your host, Rabbi Perl, saying, have a wonderful, safe week. Until next time, all the best.